They say the wind speaks here, the ranch of lost whispers. Mariana's car skidded on the dirt road, sending up a cloud of red dust that looked like dried blood. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as exposed bones. It had been 3 hours since she'd left the last town behind, and the GPS had died at least 40 minutes ago. Now there was only the desert, the relentless sun, and that road that seemed to lead nowhere, or maybe it would take her exactly where she needed to go. In the back seat, the box of paperwork shook with every jolt. Office documents, certificates, divorce papers, yet to be signed. Mariana's entire life summarized in yellowed pages and official stamps. She had fled. There was no other word for it. Fled from her empty apartment in Sao Paulo, from her lawyer's insistent calls, from her friends' pitying looks. Fled from herself, and then, like a mirage born of the sweltering heat, she saw. The wooden gate appeared out of nowhere, 2 tall columns supporting a sign hanging by rusty chains. The letters were almost faded, but it was still read, Rancho dos Susurros. Below, in smaller, newer letters, rural lodging, vacancies available. Mariana didn't remember looking for it. She didn't remember planning to stop anywhere. But her foot slammed on the brake almost of its own accord, and the car came to a stop in a cloud of dust that took several long seconds to settle. Through the orange haze, she saw the house. It was an old building, the kind they don't make anymore. Dark wood, a wide porch with ornate columns, tall windows with peeling white shutters. Beautiful in a ghostly way, as if it had been built for another time, another world, and had been stuck there waiting. Waiting for what? For whom? The wind blew, and Mariana swore she heard something. Not words exactly, but a sound that sounded dangerously like distant voices, like a conversation taking place in another room of an empty house. She got out of the car. The heat hit her like a punch. But there was something else in the air, something that made the skin on her arms crawl despite the sweat. A feeling of being watched, of having crossed some invisible line. The balcony door opened before she could knock. The man who appeared must have been around 60, with grey hair tied back in a ponytail, his face marked by the sun and something else. Something Mariana couldn't quite name. Scars, perhaps, or simply the weight of carrying too many stories. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. Mariana blinked, confused. "I saw the sign. I'm looking for accommodation." The man smiled, but there was no joy in it, only recognition, as if he knew exactly why she was there, even if she herself didn't. "They always send whoever needs it," he muttered, mostly to himself. Then louder, "I'm Miguel, owner of the ranch. Come in. The wind will pick up at dusk." The interior of the house was surprisingly cool, but not comfortable. The walls were covered in old black and white photographs. Serious faces stared into the camera with that hard expression people had in old photos, as if smiling were a sin. But there was something more disturbing about the images. In each one, in the corner, always in the corner, there was a smudge. A smudge that could have been a film defect or dust or... "They're the original family," Miguel said, following his gaze. "The Corderos. They built this place in 1887. They came from the south, fleeing something. It was never clear what. Running away," Mariana repeated. And the word sounded hollow in her mouth. "Everyone who comes here is running from something," Miguel said. And his eyes met hers with an intensity that made her take a step back. "The question is, what are you running from, Mariana?" She didn't remember saying her name. The room was Spartan but clean. An iron bed, a white bedspread, and a window overlooking the back of the property. Outside, Mariana could see an old rusty windmill, turning lazily even though there was no apparent breeze. Beyond it, only open land stretched as far as the eye could see, undulating into low dunes of red sand. She threw herself onto the bed, exhausted. The silence was absolute. For the first time in months, no traffic noise, no sirens, no arguments from neighbors through the thin walls. Just silence. And then the wind started. It was a low sound at first, a distant whisper that could have been mistaken for the creaking of the house's old boards. But it grew. It slid through the cracks in the windows, snaked under the door, wrapped itself around the bed like invisible hands, and it brought voices. Mariana jumped to her feet, her heart racing. She pressed her ear to the window, trying to understand where they were coming from. But it was impossible to pinpoint them. The voices were everywhere and nowhere. Overlapping whispers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some sounded desperate, others resigned, and one, just one, seemed to be calling her name. Mariana, Mariana, can you hear? Finally someone who can hear. She flung open the window. The wind rushed in like an avalanche, bringing sand and that strange metallic smell of scrap metal and wet earth. The voices became clearer for a moment, so clear that Mariana could make out the words, "Help us. We are prisoners. So many years. Don't let him." And then, abruptly, silence. As if someone had turned off a radio, Mariana backed away, trembling. Through the window, she saw Miguel in the backyard, standing in front of the windmill. He was looking at her, and even from a distance, she could see the expression on his face. Fear, pity, or worse, expectation. Dinner was served at the large kitchen table. Miguel had prepared a stew that smelled surprisingly good, but Mariana could barely eat. Her hands trembled every time she picked up the spoon. The voices, she finally said, breaking the heavy silence. "In the wind. Do you hear them?" Miguel didn't stop eating. "Every day. Since I moved here 15 years ago, and you just accept that?" Now he stopped. He set the spoon aside with deliberate care. Accept isn't quite the word. Live with it. Try to understand. Fail. Try again. Who are they? The lost. Miguel stood, walked to a shelf, and returned with an old book, its leather cover cracked and stained. He opened it to a marked page. It was a yellowed newspaper clipping, the date barely legible, April 23rd, 1889. Mariana read aloud, her voice breaking. "Tragedy at Rancho Cordero. 23 people missing after unprecedented windstorm. Search continues, but authorities lose hope. Witnesses report hearing screams coming from the wind itself. They were never found," Miguel said softly. "No bodies, no trace, as if the wind had simply swallowed them. And ever since, on certain nights when the wind blows a certain way, they return, trapped in the air, in the currents, in the whispers. 23 souls who can neither leave nor return." Mariana pushed her chair back, the metal screeching on the wooden floor. "This is crazy. I need to leave now." "You can try." Miguel's tone wasn't threatening, just matter of fact. "But the road that brought you here has a habit of disappearing at night. And the wind is getting stronger. Do you feel it?" And Mariana felt it. The windows began to tremble in their frames. The whistling returned, louder now, more insistent. And with it the voices clearer, closer. "Why me?" Mariana whispered. "Why was I brought here?" Miguel looked at her with those tired eyes, filled with an ancient sadness. "Because you can hear them. Most people can't. They try, they send the call on the wind, but only a few have the gift, or the curse. Broken people, lost people, people running from their own lives." The words hit Mariana like rocks. She thought of the empty apartment, of her husband, who had simply left one morning and never returned, leaving only a 3-line note. Of her career that had imploded when she could no longer concentrate. Of her mother who had died the previous year without them having spoken in 5 years because of stupid pride. Lost. Yes, she was lost. "What do they want?" she asked, and her voice sounded small, like a child's. "Liberation. But there's a price." Miguel closed the book with a thud. "There's always a price. They need an anchor. Someone who can serve as a bridge between this world and the next. Someone willing to listen to their stories, carry their burdens, and then set them free. And you never." "I tried." Miguel's voice cracked. "God knows I tried. But they didn't choose me. I wasn't strong enough. Or maybe I was too strong, still stuck in life. You need to be on the edge, Mariana. Between staying and leaving. Between living and giving up. That's why you're here." The wind howled like a living creature, and voices burst out in despair. "Now! Now you're here! Finally! Listen to us, please!" 23 souls. 23 stories. Mariana covered her ears, but it was useless. The voices weren't coming from outside. They were coming from within, reverberating in her bones, in her blood, in every cell of her body. And then a voice stood out, calm, feminine, almost gentle. "Don't be afraid, dear. We don't want to hurt you. We just want to tell you and be freed. Wouldn't you like to be freed from your own weight?" Yes, God, yes. Before she could stop herself, Mariana found herself walking out of the kitchen, across the living room, and pushing open the front door. Miguel shouted something behind her, but his words were lost in the roar of the wind. Outside, night had fallen like a black curtain. There was no moon, no stars, only darkness and wind and those voices that now sang. A macabre symphony of whispers and screams and wails. The windmill spun frantically, its blades cutting through the air with a sharp, almost metallic sound. And all around it Mariana could see, not with her eyes, but with something deeper, more primal. Figures, translucent, made of wind and dust and non-existent moonlight. 23 people, frozen in the moment of their terror. A woman with a baby in her arms, her mouth open in an eternal scream. An elderly man, his arm outstretched as if trying to reach something. Children, so many children, clinging to one another, and everyone looked at her. "Tell our stories," the female voice whispered, and Mariana saw it came from the woman with the baby. "Let them pass through you. It's the only way to free us. But be careful, my dear. Be careful of the weight." 23 lifetimes of pain, fear, and regret. It can break a person or rebuild them. Mariana took another step. Then another. The wind pushed and pulled her simultaneously, as if the air itself was undecided about what to do with her. Tears streamed down her face, but she couldn't tell if they were her own or if the wind was bringing them from another place. Another time, he reached out his hand and touched the untouchable. The first story hit her like a bolt of lightning. Ana Cordero, 28 years old, mother of 2. She had come to the ranch full of hope, fleeing the city where her husband had drunk himself to death. She wanted a new beginning, but the wind had other plans. She died holding her children, promising that everything would be okay, knowing it was a lie. The second story came before Mariana could catch her breath. Juan Cordero, 72 years old, patriarch. He had built every plank of that house with his own hands, hoping to leave a legacy. But all he left behind were whispers and regrets for not saying, "I love you" enough. The third, the fourth, the fifth. Each story was a stab wound. Each life was a loss. Each death was a crushing weight that added to the previous one. Mariana fell to her knees in the red earth screaming, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop. The stories came like a flood, 23 rivers of pain and love and fear converging through her. Maria, 15 years old, who had run away from home but could not escape her destiny. Carlos, 9 years old, who just wanted to see his father again. Pedro, 45, who had killed a man in self-defense and carried the guilt like a cross. Rafaela, 32, who had loved a woman at a time when that was unforgivable, and so on. 23 lives, 23 endings, 23 souls trapped in an endless loop of wind and whispers. When the last story ended, Mariana lay on the floor, shaking violently. Blood was pouring from her nose and ears. Her body felt like broken glass. But something inside her had changed. The weight was gone. Not their weight, hers. All those stories of pain and loss had somehow put her own into perspective. Her divorce, her grief, her loneliness, it all seemed small now. Not insignificant, but human, normal, bearable. And around her the wind began to calm. The spectral figures were changing. The light within them grew brighter, clearer. Their faces, contorted in fear, began to relax into something approaching peace. "Thank you," the woman with the baby whispered, her voice no longer coming from the wind, but from somewhere farther away and yet much closer. "Thank you for carrying us. Thank you for listening to us. Now we can move on." One by one, the figures began to fade, not with sadness but with relief, like exhaling after holding your breath for 100 years. They floated upward, away into the starless night, until nothing remained but silence. A true silence, peaceful. Miguel found her there, lying on the ground, staring up at the sky that was slowly beginning to reveal stars that hadn't been there before. He knelt beside her, tears streaming down his stiff face. "You did it," he said reverently. 15 years I've been here. 15 years trying. And you did it in one night. I had to be ready, Mariana whispered, her voice hoarse. I had to be broken enough to open up, and strong enough not to shatter completely. She sat up with effort. The world still spun, but differently now, as if it had been put back on its proper axis. "What do I do now?" she asked. Miguel smiled, and for the first time it was a genuine smile. "What we all do. You keep living. But now you carry not only your stories, but theirs as well. It's a burden, but also a gift. You'll never feel truly alone again. You'll never again think your pain is unique in the universe." Mariana stayed at the ranch for 3 more days. She helped Miguel catalog the stories she'd received, writing each one down in an old notebook with yellowed pages. 23 lives documented finally. 23 names that would not be forgotten. On the morning of the 4th day, she packed her bags in the car. The road that had disappeared into the night was now clear in the daylight, a red ribbon snaking through the desert. "Are you coming back?" Miguel asked. Mariana looked at the ranch. The old house seemed different now, lighter somehow, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from its foundations. "One day," she said, "when I need to remember." "Remember what?" "That being lost is not the same as being doomed. That the wind can carry you away, but it can also bring you back. That there is a difference between running away from something and walking towards something new." She got into the car, down the dirt road, in the opposite direction from which she had come. Not back to São Paulo, not yet, but somewhere new, somewhere she could rebuild, not on the ruins of her old life, but alongside them, embodying them, honoring them. In the rearview mirror, she saw Miguel wave. And for a moment, just a moment, she swore she saw 23 other figures beside him, translucent, peaceful, waving too. The wind blew softly through the open window, but this time it brought no whispers, just the smell of warm sand and possibilities. They say the wind speaks there, at the ranch of lost whispers. But Mariana knew the truth now. The wind did not speak. He listened, and sometimes, just sometimes, that was exactly what lost souls, both living and dead, needed most. Someone who would just listen.